back for just a second. Oh, I guess we are live. We are officially live. So, first of all, welcome once again, everybody, to the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. Super excited to be here with my co-host, Kelly Falardo. And we're going to be talking to various people about writing, speaking, being interviewed, influence, all those kind of good things. And just as we kick things off, in case you're not familiar with Blue Talks, you can find out more about Blue Talks at bluetalks.com. And I happen to have them in front of me. So here's the first three Blue Talks books. Number 4 is literally going to be on pre-order availability this week. And so, Kelly, first of all, before we bring our first guest on, welcome. So great to see you again. How are things?
Great to see you too. Things are crazy. I just wrapped up my first 3-day event that we had just a couple weeks ago called the Best-Selling Author Mastery Live. And so we had about 120 people popping in and out on 3 days for my event. So it was so awesome. We had, experts like you speaking and a few other people speaking. We had an inspiration panel where we had a number of people speak about what it was like to write their first book and become a best-selling author. And, we had lots of great content teaching people how to do it. And so, I was really quite excited, and it was great to see that, we pulled off a successful event and doing another one in June. So, it's been great.
That is awesome. Very cool. And I guess if I talk about what's new in my world, I actually just launched my member site that I've been building for, it's over 2 years now. In the back end, you've known about it, Kelly, for over a year, I think. And so I've been planning to launch this for the longest time. And I won't say a whole lot about it. I'm sure I'll talk about it over the next 5 days a little bit. But I want to bring our first guest on. But I'll just say on the member site, basically it's called the Influencer Vault. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to the influencervault.com. And when you go there, it actually allows you to grab my top 10 insights guide, which is the 10 insights I've learned from the top leaders in the world. And that's free. And then it basically forwards you to the page, the website that talks about the vault. But essentially what it is that I decided to launch a member site that would allow me to help people up-level their influence. So we could basically, somebody who's going to be an influencer tomorrow, let's make them an influencer today. And how we do that is through world-class training, where you get to attend live interviews with everybody from Les Brown to Stedman Graham to Bob Proctor. And these are all coming up in the next couple of months. You get to actually be there live with them, ask questions in real time. And then also on that, we bring opportunities to you for speaking, writing, podcast opportunities to be interviewed, all this kind of stuff. Instead of you having to go out and find these opportunities, we have a classified basically section where we bring those opportunities to you. So I'm so excited to finally get this launched. Again, you can get more at the influencervault.com. So that's what I've been up to.
That's excellent. I know. It's so exciting to see you finally launch it. I love it.
2 years is a long time to be having it in the background. But we're finally there. So awesome stuff. So without further ado, let's bring on our first guest. And Kelly, since this is the guest that you brought to our world, if you don't mind, I'm going to get you to welcome her.
Oh, excellent. We love that.
Perfect. So,
hey. Dannella, so great to see you here. So, Dannella and I met, we met at one of the conferences, some sort of conference. And so what was super cool about Dannella is that she has a company called Speakers Need to Speak. So she is an event planner who I wanted to, of course, know, because I know that she's an event planner who's looking for speakers. So when you're a speaker, you want to know the event planners, because when you know the event planners, they know where all the speaking opportunities are. And so what was really cool was that Dannella was telling us how there's even more speaking opportunities now than there ever has been since COVID hit. And so while, Corey, you and I have talked about that, different speaking events and how we lost our speaking gigs when COVID hit, but then we pivoted to doing more other stuff. And so when I pivoted into being a book coach, I got to go to one of Dannella's events, her Speakers Need to Speak event, and she had a speaking competition. and and I won it. And I never thought I was going to win because of all the stuff that had happened to me before that event. And I thought I bombed my second speech, and I still made it into the finals. And anyways, I was totally amazed and shocked that I actually won the competition. So I really want to have Dannella part of our event because she is one of those people that is going to help all of us speakers realize that there are more speaking opportunities now than ever. So thank you, Dannella, for coming on board with us.
So happy to be here, and yeah, I was thrilled to have you at our event. And I have been an event producer for a long time, and that is where Speakers Need to Speak came from. Being an event producer, we had speakers constantly knocking on the door. We would put speakers into our own events or our clients' events, and so I was collecting speakers the way other people collect seashells. I never knew what next subject matter expert we might need, and so I was always looking for great talent and plugging them in and making those matches where it made sense. And I had people asking me to help them get on other stages. So we took a look at what the challenge really was for folks, and how did they, why did they need help getting out on speaking gigs? Because there were over 7,000 a day pre-COVID. And now, like you just mentioned, there's even more than that, because now we not only look at the stages that people step up to, but we look at all the opportunities for visibility and sharing your message, from podcasts to social media programming, television, radio, virtual events, that all of the events that have pivoted. So great opportunities out there, but with great opportunities, there are also sometimes some challenges, and finding them and deciding which are the right opportunities for you as a speaker continues to be a challenge. And that's how we help our speakers get out on more stages, is by solving those challenges for them.
That's excellent. I love it, Dannella, because a lot of people that I know have said that you've gotten them some amazing opportunities on different stages, and you've helped them take their career from here to here. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you on board, is because so many people think that now that COVID's here and it seems like it's going to be here for a little while longer, they don't know where the opportunities are, and they don't even know how to find them. And that's what you do.
Yeah, we provide our clients leads for speaking opportunities every month. One, a lot of speakers don't like to do the research that it requires to even know who to reach out to. They know they need to find speaking opportunities, but let's be honest, what speaker really wants to spend their time researching on Google, reaching out through social media channels? I actually give a talk where I share 5 free ways for people to find speaking opportunities, and I'm happy to share those with you and your audience today. The challenge with those 5 ways, though, is they all do take some time. And we're busy entrepreneurs. And so I have a great employee. His name is Ted. Ted does the job that nobody really wants to do. I don't even want to do this job. But Ted does an amazing job. He spends, and he's a full-time employee of mine, he spends 100% of his time, his only job every month, is to create our leads list for speakers. So it's freshly curated every month. It is verified that there is a speaking opportunity attached to that. It's all the information from the contact, the dates, the location, a link to a speaking application if there's an online application. And again, it's been verified that that opportunity does exist. So, it's not that it's challenging work or difficult work. It's actually very simple, but it takes time. And that's what we just don't have as entrepreneurs. The speed of virtual is so fast. Opportunities are coming up fast. Events, we would never think about scheduling and executing a 3-day event in less than 6 months pre-COVID. We're literally doing them in just a couple of months' time. I've been hired by a couple of 3-day event hosts within 2 weeks of their event. to come in and help them with the logistics and the production. So the speed of everything is very quick. Those speaking opportunities are coming available, but they're filling quickly and everybody's moving on. So having a list so that you're not stuck in that research part, I think is one of the problems that we've solved for speakers. And then two is consistent training on what to do with those opportunities. How do you maximize them? How do you prepare yourself better for them? How do you prepare yourself in them? And then how do you follow up? And the speaking industry has really changed in this last year. Keynotes, meaning you're getting paid for your talk, is probably been the hardest hit area of the speaking industry. Those that have those kind of opportunities tend to be corporations and universities and associations and organizations, and they were just not as fast to go to the virtual space as entrepreneurs and experts. Entrepreneurs are going to find a way. If they're, like MacGyver, if there's a problem that needs to be solved, they're going to pivot, they're going to shake, they're going to shift. And entrepreneurs and event experts shifted very quickly last year. So if you're looking for a speaking opportunity, and that speaking is to then grow your business, grow your audience, grow your authority, and you have a sale to make after the talk, those opportunities are plentiful, and you really just need good discernment, you need a good system, and you need consistency. If you're still in the keynote space, it's not that those opportunities don't exist. They're just a little bit harder to find because the decision makers are not even all at an office anymore. They're scattered, they're working from home. It's a little bit harder to get to that decision maker, and your relationships are much more important than they were than ever before. So we've seen that shift for speakers as well. If you were a keynote speaker before and didn't have another way of making money through speaking, that's another shift that we've worked with a lot of our speakers on, or we've recommended, that they take a look at. That the knowledge doesn't have to just come with a check for that speaking opportunity, but how can you take that knowledge and sell directly to the end user, to the audience, to the consumer? And that we've seen great success for.
I know that's what's happened with me, is that, typically I was a keynote speaker and I loved it. I loved knowing, how much money I was going to make. And me being a single mom, it was really critical for me to know how much money I was going to make every month. But when COVID hit and I pivoted into coaching people to become authors and best-selling authors, 2020 has been the best year ever for me because I made that shift. Right. And now I have more virtual opportunities than ever because the keynote speeches are just not there as much as, like you say, the entrepreneurial ones with the coaching and that type of thing. And even for myself, this is the first time ever that I did a live 3-day event. And the reason I did it was because I know people wanted it, but also because I didn't have that massive cash flow outlay that would have happened if I was doing a live event. So I was more willing to take the risk to do it because I knew I didn't have a big upfront cost. Good. Okay, so Dannella, you mentioned about 5 ways that speakers can find speaking gigs. Do you want to share about that? I'd love to know more about that. I know everybody's waiting to hear what are 5 ways that they can get more speaking gigs.
Yeah, love to share that. So this is action you can take immediately. First one is your network. I recommend taking a minute and just creating a list of everyone that you network with or groups that you're involved with. It might be your local networking group, your local BNI or your local Chamber of Commerce, but anywhere where you are a member or part of an association. It might be your alumni association, it might be your industry association, but whatever networks that you're tapped into, write a list of all of those, wherever you pay dues or association fees or you attend regularly. List those and then explore all of those to see if there is a speaking opportunity within your network that you've not explored before. The second is your calendar. pull out your calendar from 2018, 2019, 2020, and if you spoke previously, now is a great opportunity to reach back to your past, reach to those event producers, those event hosts, and see what they're doing now. Because we found at this point, everyone has shifted to virtual and may even have multiple events going on. We have one client who, pre-COVID, we would never have thought about doing more than 1 or 2 3-day events in a calendar year because of that ramp-up time that you need, because of the hotel, because of the venue, because of hospitality. Well, we have one client who's doing a 3-day event every other month because we don't have some of those upfront hard costs to put out like you just mentioned. So it may be somebody that you spoke at their annual event back in 2019. They might be doing that now for 2021. They may even have multiple events. So if you had a good event in your past that you spoke at, reach out, see what the opportunities are now. Also, if you attended a great event in 2018, 2019, and you looked at the people on like either side of you and said to yourself, I'd really like to speak in front of these people, or this is my audience, I see myself up on that stage, reach out there as well. So look at your past calendar, events you attended, events you spoke at, and use that to fill your future calendar. The third is collaborations. And collaborations are working with those people where you serve the same audience, but you serve them in different ways. So I serve experts and entrepreneurs with speaking and with events. Okay, I don't do books, but books are a great, you work with this exact same audience that I do, but you serve them through writing their bestseller, and I serve them in different ways. So you and I can collaborate. I can invite you to speak to my Facebook group. I can invite you to speak to my community. I could invite you to speak on my event. And reciprocity almost always kicks in. So that's one way that you can collaborate, is to stage swap, whether it's Facebook Lives, it's interviews, it's an interview like this is, or an event, a speaking opportunity. You can collaborate and you can swap. You can also do joint ventures together. You can work with somebody who serves the same audience, but you work in different ways. You could collaborate and create a custom package that serves that audience by working together for them. You can also do promotions with each other. So look at collaborations. Collaboration is definitely the currency keyword for 2021. I think if anything, this last year has shown us that we cannot do it alone, that we need to get support. We need to use the resources because things are moving very, very quickly. And if you do try to do it alone, you're just too slow. So work with those people to get in front of new audiences and work together. So number 3 is collaborations. Number 4 is social media. And there's a couple of points to social media. One is it's never easier to be seen. You can go live literally any minute that you want to and start to garner your own audience on social media, whether it's Facebook Lives or Instagram or LinkedIn. You can go live and you can start to attract an audience. You can also use social media, all those that I mentioned before. Look at those calendars. See if there's events that are coming up. See what events are being promoted. That starts to fall into the research part that a lot of speakers don't enjoy doing, but there is a wealth of information on social media about upcoming events that might be a great fit for you to get in front of new audiences. And I would be remiss to mention social media and not mention Clubhouse. Clubhouse has been a boom for speakers. You can create your own speaking opportunity anytime you want to. Develop a following. You can tap in with other experts. You can attend a room that has your ideal audience. Raise your hand. Get up on the stage. Ask a question that invites people to take a look at what your bio is. Of course, I'm not recommending that you kind of, take over somebody's room and become overly self-promotional. But any opportunity that you can raise your hand and be seen and be heard and invite people to take a little closer look at who and what you are and connect is an opportunity for you to use a platform and get in front of new audiences. And you can create your own rooms. I have a Clubhouse room now that I do with another event host every Monday at 7 o'clock. You know, we open up a room for podcasts and events. We didn't used to see the relationship between podcasts and live, you know, in-person or virtual events, because we kind of held stages that you stepped up onto in a little bit higher, you know, a little higher up on the food chain. But now we realize any opportunity that you can speak and be heard is a great opportunity. So Clubhouse, I definitely recommend. You know, I'm an Android girl, but I went out and got an iPhone just for Clubhouse, and let me tell you, it pays that bill every single month in new connections. So don't let that bit of technology slow you down. And then the fifth one is serious research. And I have a method for using Google. You know, you got to get your research fingers ready to go. I do believe that all speaking should come with monetization. So I recommend what I call my SAIL method. And so if you write down these letters, SAALE, and I'll explain to you why I have that misspelled. These are the words that you want to use when you're doing a keyword search in Google to find speaking opportunities. The S stands for speaking opportunity. When you do a search, you want to use some variation of that. Speaking opportunity, speaker, speaking, some variation with the word speak in it. The first and second A are for two descriptive words of your ideal audience or your ideal avatar. You probably, if you're a business owner and you've been doing marketing, you've probably done some serious thinking on who is your perfect audience member. So if you have that list, and it could be adjectives, it could be nouns that describe your perfect client, you want to use two of those words when you do a search. You just get a much better and targeted result, and you can switch those words up when you do repetitive searches. So maybe you speak to women professionals, or maybe you speak to millennial dentists, or maybe you speak to local landscapers. Whoever your ideal audience is, you want to use two words that describe them in your keyword search, and you'll just get, as I said, better targeted results come up to the top. The L stands for location. And still, the majority of events today are virtual, but we are starting to see some local or smaller events come back. We are starting to see some in-person events go on the calendar. So location is still important, whether it's the location of where the event is, or it's a location that you really want to grow into. You can vary that location by where you're looking to find a speaking opportunity. Location is also important when we do go back to in-person and we're doing some more travel. Say you book I live here in Georgia, but if I book a speaking opportunity in California, and I'm going to have the expenses of travel and hotel, I will often do a search in California for those dates around the time that I'm going to be there anyway, before I book my travel, because if I can book a couple of speaking opportunities in a short period of time and consolidate some of my travel expenses, that all of a sudden becomes a much more fruitful trip out of town. So location can be used in a couple of different ways to your benefit. And then the last stands for event type. And the event type will help you dial into the size and the nature of the speaking opportunity. Maybe you like to work with smaller groups of people, a little bit more interactive, a little bit more workshop style. So you might use words like workshop or meetup or networking group. Maybe you want to speak on a bigger stage, or you're looking for more of an industry, conference. So use words like conference or expo or event, things that would represent a larger type of event. So when you get time to research, use my SAIL method in Google, and it will bring up targeted searches. Be very organized, put it all on a spreadsheet, copy those links, research the websites, and find out which ones are then the best opportunity for you to follow up on. So that's 5 free ways that you can find speaking opportunities, and get started now. You need a system and you need consistency, because you want to be out on speaking opportunities as frequently as you can be to continue to grow your audience and your authority.
I love that. I love it because I still remember one time I got hired to speak in Winnipeg at a burn survivor conference. And so they were paying for my flight, my hotel, plus a fee. And so then what I did is I contacted all the Rotary clubs in the Winnipeg area. And I ended up with 7 additional speaking gigs. So I ended up staying, instead of for one weekend, I stayed for a whole week. And I did all these 7 Rotary Club speeches along with the Burn Survivor Conference. And so it was excellent because it was a great way to make tons of connections. And I was already going to be there, so why not be there speaking? So I loved it. It's a great thing to do, for sure.
Fantastic. So what you also know is, all that takes time. And, that's why we created Speakers Need to Speak, because not every entrepreneur or speaker has that kind of time. Some of our speakers are still working full-time jobs. Some of our speakers are, busy entrepreneurs speaking and getting clients. And that's really what most speakers want to be working on. They want to be on the stage, and they want to be working with those clients that raise their hand and, want transformation or coaching, or they're in their courses or in their programs or in their community. So that was really why we created Speakers Need to Speak, to do some of those 5 things that I just shared with you, that we can do that to support our speakers. There's Corey. Welcome back.
Good. So Corey, do you have any questions for Dannella? I know you've been watching behind the scenes, so go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and sorry, I was just actually replying to somebody about one of our upcoming guests. So I have to I'm juggling a lot of things people don't see behind the scenes. So one thing I want to ask you about, Dannella, and when I ask this question, it's not to say it as a negative or put you on the spot or in any way around this, but I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Clubhouse. And so I wanted to get your take on something in Clubhouse, because I'm going to say I'm going in, not all in yet on Clubhouse, because and take this the right way, but I always worry about it being the next shiny new object. And one of the things that I saw, and I don't know why this spoke to me, and maybe it shouldn't have, maybe I wish I wouldn't have seen it, but I saw a poll on LinkedIn by a fairly big LinkedIn influencer, and the poll had something like 25,000 comments, not votes, comments. And the person said, do you like Clubhouse less or more now that it's been going for a couple of months? And like 90% said less. And the reasoning was, they said they go into rooms now and there's way too much selling and pitching. And so it's turning them off of Clubhouse. And so my concern is, just like a stock or anything else, is going there and starting to jump in and invest my time if that's happening. Now, here's the catch to that, what I just said. These are people on LinkedIn. So they are obviously on a different platform. They like a different platform. So the only way to do a real knowledge around that is to do a survey on Clubhouse, not on LinkedIn. But I just wanted to get your take on that. Do you have any fear at all? And obviously, I'll add in, it doesn't matter what's happening in the future. People are still seeing amazing results right now. But what are your thoughts around Clubhouse in the longer term? And again, I don't say this to take away from it or say that's going to happen. It's just I saw that survey and it concerned me, because we only have so much time to allocate. And I don't want to go too far into a thing that pulls too much of my time. And I have a really good friend who now does 4 hours in one club room every week on Clubhouse, and I just don't have that type of time to spend. But they're saying you have to do a lot of time to get any kind of results. So that's my whole big question out of that, and I'll let you answer your thoughts around that.
Awesome. So I got invited into Clubhouse, and the first week I spent some time. It was right after the holidays. I think it might have been the first week of the year. I went out and I got an iPhone because I'm a Droid girl. So I was saying but I'd been invited by several people to be a speaker in their rooms, and I'm like, well, I'll go get the iPhone. Everyone in my family is an iPhone user except for me. So I figured, worst case scenario, I'll get the phone and we'll go from there. So the first week I spent a lot of time because it was that first week of the year, not a lot scheduled yet. And I quickly saw how it could take over your schedule. And I have seen some people that it really has taken over their schedule. So there's two things I would recommend. One, know what time you can dedicate to it and what you can. If you're starting out and you do have more time, then you have audience and authority, then could that be a place to get audience and authority and make some connections very quickly when you have more time? Yes, it can be. Because you can immediately be in a room and raise your hand and make some connections that you're not making right now. If you're a little further along in your business and maybe you don't have as much time, I would recommend, like anything else, dedicate a certain amount of time, dedicate a certain amount of a length of time that you're going to give something to work or not work, and then reevaluate it. So I saw in that first week, like, I could totally get lost in this. I think for me, it being a separate phone has been brilliant because I literally put it away. I don't pay attention to the notifications, and I have very specific times. I have one club room that I moderate every week, and then I have 2 other times in my calendar that I jump in and I explore who's talking where, when. So it's about 3 hours a week that I've dedicated to Clubhouse, and that's it. And I'm getting great results, and at this point, it's certainly been worth my 3 hours. I've generated new clients. I got people to attend my recent event. I was able to invite them. I've made some great connections for collaboration, and I'm continuing to evaluate it. And I gave it 6 months. We're going to reevaluate it. We just started the Monday evening show. We started in February. So I have it on my calendar. In July, we're going to reevaluate that and see if it's been fruitful, see if it should continue, and we'll go from there. So totally agree with you. I've seen some folks go down that rabbit hole, and you're like, where are they? And if you're spending, that much time and you're not generating results, then you need to honestly take a look at what you're doing with that platform.
Awesome stuff. I'm so I'm so glad you shared that, Dannella. And yeah, like I said, from me, when I say that, it could become the best thing we've ever discovered around growing our brand, growing our platform, finding new clients. It's not to certainly say that it won't be, or it's not, but it's just, I know that there's got to be people watching, and I know people ask me all the time, do you think it's a good investment of my time? And what if it goes away? Like some other social platforms have, like, I remember when the Vine, everybody said that's the future, it's changing everything. And the Vine was for a little while the future, but then it sort of kind of disappeared on the Vine, And so having said that, I just thought I'd get your take on it, because I agree with you that right now it's the perfect time. If you're going to do it now. But I just worry about those people that switch their gears from something that might have been just about to work. The 3 feet, they might be 3 feet from gold, and then they move over to Clubhouse, and then all of a sudden, 6 months from now or 3 months from now, they're so far into Clubhouse and people are turning away from it. So that's my only thoughts on it. And then I also think you have to realize there's different audiences too. For instance, Clubhouse really draws an audience of people that love audio, people that people that would listen to a podcast are a perfect audience for Clubhouse. But if you're a person that loves video and doesn't like audio alone at all, Clubhouse might not be a fit for you. So I think you also have to figure out what's your niche, because and then you can tell me your thoughts on this, but I don't think you should go all in on a platform if you don't like what the platform does. Like if you don't like only using audio, then I don't think you should go into Clubhouse just to pick up clients. That's just my take on it. So I just wanted to get your take on Clubhouse. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important that you have a belief and you subscribe to the methods that you're doing, I think, to be in integrity. I don't do webinars, for example. It's just not something that I've done in my business. If that works for somebody, great. I certainly enjoy attending webinars, and I'll tune in where it makes sense. But that's not an area that I have focused on. So I don't promote that. I don't tell people, what my experience is in that area. Clubhouse, I think one of the things that has taken, because we have been on camera for the last year, I think there is a novelty to being able to be connected, but still be washing the dishes. One of the reasons why podcasts are so prevalent and podcasts are booming is that people can do other things. They can take in information and they can still do other things. They can multitask. Clubhouse, I think, is a nice in between to that. You can sit back and you can just passively listen to experts, or you can actively jump in. And you don't always get that with the podcast because, as you probably know, I don't know what the exact number is, but a majority of podcasts are not listened to in real time. They're listened to in replays. They're consumed when the consumer wants to consume, when they're in the car, when they're traveling, when they have set aside that time. So Clubhouse is a nice little hybrid where you do have to be in the moment, but you don't have to be dolled up. You don't have to look the part. You're not on video. If you want to just be listening to experts, you could still multitask a little bit. You could still wash the dishes, take the dog for a walk. So I think it is hitting, a few check marks for people today that we haven't had in the past. I do think that social audio will continue to be part of our landscape, and how you plug into that, whether it's a podcast or it's Clubhouse, or I'm sure there will be other audio only social media. I think I've seen 2 that are in the works already, just like our social media. We have Facebook, and we have LinkedIn, and we have Instagram and TikTok. I mean, I never thought about TikTok for business. I have a 14-year-old daughter and thought TikTok was only, where they went dancing on, on TikTok. I've met some experts recently that are doing amazing business using TikTok and getting in front of new audiences. So, I think like any type of social media, we need to see where is our audience at, and that may be a little bit more important than where we want to be at. And then you need to take a look at, okay, if I'm going to be here and it's not where I want to be, but my audience is there, how deep do I want to go in? What time do I want to focus? What resources do I want to focus? And what result am I going to get from it?
Awesome stuff. Well, I'm glad I asked you about that, because that's one of those rabbit holes I find sometimes we don't go down, and people ignore this idea of 2 things. One, what you said, which is so important, Dannella, about how much time we allocate. And I think that's even important whether it's a new one or not. Like, how much time are you spending on Facebook, and is that the place for you to be? How much time are you spending on LinkedIn, and is that the place for you to be? And then the bigger question, is that where my ideal clients are? And then how much time can I allocate to it? That's one side. And then the second side is, how much do I go all in if I don't know what this is going to look like in a month or 2 months or 3 months? Because the other thing is, we only have a finite amount of resources to dedicate as well. So if you went, and I'm just using this as an example, but if you go all in on any of them, let's say Clubhouse, and then it slowly diminishes, then you're kind of stuck, because you went down this path of going, I'm all in on this. I've learned everything about Clubhouse. I know everything there is to know about Clubhouse. And then let's say all of a sudden people start disappearing on it. Well, then it's like if you had, and I always use this example, but if you were selling a fitness product at Walmart, and then all of a sudden Walmart's like, guess what? We found a different fitness personality we want to go with, and took you off the shelves. Walmart doesn't collect email addresses for you. So the next day, you just lost your biggest client, and you lost all your client base. How are you going to rebuild? So same thing, if you were only all in on Facebook, and then Facebook boots you off, and I'm seeing that a lot now. A good friend of ours, Kelly, I won't say his name on the air, but just started adding people again because he just got booted off. We know another person that has a big health group, which might give you a hint. She just got booted off not that long ago and had to build from scratch. And so if you go all in on any of these platforms only, what do you have if you get kicked off or it starts disappearing? So that's why I wanted to go there, Dannella, because I worried people do chase a new object, and then all of a sudden, if they go a little in on that and get rid of all the other ones, there could be a day where they could regret that. So maybe dip your feet in and your toes in and figure out how much time you can spend. So I just thought it was important to go there. And Kelly, maybe I'll pass it over to you to see if you have any other questions before we start bringing things to a close, because I know our next guest is right on the queue as well.
Right. Well, no, I just love what Dannella does. And, I mean, me being a speaker, I'm always looking for more speaking gigs. That's my thing, is I love it so much. So going back also to visibility, Dannella, one of the reasons that I did your event and your contest was because I wanted more visibility, right? And a lot of times people are too shy to get involved, but I was like, when Dannella did this event and she had the speaking contest, I was thinking, well, I want everybody at the event to hear my story, because you never know where they are going to know other people that want to hire me. So, I always say, go all in, even if it's scary. I mean, it was scary during that contest. There were some really good speakers there. And, but, you just got to go all in and just do it. So just do it.
Well, we had fun with it. There were great speakers, but we also kept it light and we kept it fun. I'll just tell everybody what we did. So all of our attendees who were all speakers, had the opportunity to enter our competition. We'll have another similar event in July, so planting a few seeds if this sounds like fun to you. Definitely let's connect soon, and love to have you come to our event in July. And of course, Kelly will be back there as the reigning champ. But the speakers all got to share about them and their business, and depending on which level of the competition it was, which stage it was, had 2 or 3 minutes. So kind of your normal stand up in front of the room. Here's my 2-3 minutes. We gave them a few pointers on what they should share during that time. But then we had a little twist. We did a wheel of names, and they had a keyword or two that they had to immediately put into their 2 or 3 minute talk and relate it to their business. So what that does is it kept all of the speakers like engaged and present, and didn't turn into that, I'm sure you've attended those networking events where they go around the room, and by about the 5th or 6th person, it just starts to sound like the Charlie Brown teacher. Everyone kind of drops into that monotone, and it goes around the room, and it's hard to choose, it's hard to really discern who you've listened to. But that little bit of a twist, it kind of gets everybody present in the moment. It gets everybody leaning in, listening for you to say that word. So we started doing that a couple of events ago, and it's really been a ton of fun, as well as getting the speaker and the audience a little bit more engaged. So we'll be doing that again in July. But Kelly did a great job. She's got such heart, such passion for what she does. Has an incredible story of overcoming. If you've not had the opportunity to hear Kelly, I encourage you to do so. And now she's helping so many entrepreneurs write their books, use their books to make money. So we were happy to see you win, and happy to have the connections and the speaking opportunities that we've given you since that time.
Yeah, and the incredible prizes too were awesome.
Yeah, we had $26,000 in speaking opportunities, cash, courses, coaching programs. We brought in over 30 panelists for the event. We had incredible experts who were judging and giving great feedback, from speaking coaches to other event producers. And I think every single person who participated in the competition has gotten at least one speaking gig from that event.
Yeah, it was excellent.
That is amazing. So, Dannella, this has been absolutely such a pleasure. I just saw that Ken O'Donoghue said thank you for Dannella for that. So I don't know if he was a part of that or not, but he just said thank you for that. We had another post there, great advice. With the way StreamYard works, unfortunately, we can't see all the comments. So we'll circle back if somebody has a specific question for you. We're on about 14 platforms, and only like I think 2 of the 14 actually show up on the comments. So having said that, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. The only other thing I think we should ask before we let you run and call this a to be continued is how can people connect with you and learn more? Where would you direct them? Is there a hub? All that kind of great stuff.
Great. So you can connect with me on social media, Dannella Burnett, or Speakers Need to Speak. I think that's the easiest to remember. Speakers Need to Speak. You can find us on all the social media platforms. And is it okay if I share a little gift with everybody before I go?
Absolutely.
Great. So speakersneedtospeak.com/giveaway. If you register there, you'll not only get my Speakers Need to Speak Crush It from the Stage checklist, but it'll also put you in queue to getting on the phone with us. We'd love to find out more about who you are as a speaker, what you're looking for, see what resources we can share with you, and what stages and opportunities we can help get you out on. So Speakers Need to Speak /giveaway will definitely cue you in for me and my team to connect with you. And we've got several events coming up we'd love to invite you to give you some more training about live events and speaking.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So thanks, Dannella, like I say, so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ken said precious. It was his next one, so his next comment. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, salute you. And like I say, with your permission, I'll call it a to be continued. And Kelly, did you want to add anything before we let Dannella run?
I just want to thank Dannella for being a part of our event. So thank you so much, Dannella.
Thank you so much for having me. You all have a great rest of the day.
You too. Well, let's move on. Awesome stuff. So amazing. She so crushed it. I loved that amazing insight that she shared. And thank you so much, Kelly, for bringing such an amazing guest to us today. And I know you have another amazing guest that you've introduced us to that's coming up any second. Kelly, anything you want to add before we bring our next guest on? Anything you took from Dannella that you wanted to mention or?
No, I just want to really give speakers hope that there are opportunities out there, because I know so many speakers are devastated that, COVID is out and there are no, in-person, well, I shouldn't say there's no in-person events, but, there's a lot of speakers out there that are really upset and they think that their life is over or that their business is over, and it's not. And, like 2020 and even 2021 is shaping up to be an excellent year for me. And again, that's all because I pivoted and said, okay, keynotes is not where I'm at right now, but definitely I can do the book coaching. And that has taken over my life. And it's awesome because I'm able to impact so many people to get their books out there. And I love that. So life isn't over just because we can't do keynote speeches anymore.
Yeah, I so agree. In fact, one of the things that I have to say is for myself, and Kelly, I think you know this, but I've been down a different path since pre-COVID. Like I started pivoting before COVID, but now even with COVID, to be honest, I'm in a different scenario where speaking engagements are coming my way now. They're starting to come again my way. I say starting, I mean, I was getting a lot of virtual, but I mean, live ones are coming my way, but I'm not looking to do any speaking right now. So it changed even my mentality where I did a talk for Microsoft a couple of weeks ago and a career group. And the career group was a way to give back, and the Microsoft, obviously, it doesn't hurt your bio. So those two, I was saying, yeah, I'll go all in, but I'm not really looking to do much right now for speaking. And so it's totally changed my mindset. And at the very same time, like this past 7 days, I think I had 4 speaking opportunities come to me, 2 of them live, 2 virtual.
Wow, that's awesome.
So to your point, speakers, and I'm helping speakers get on stages. That's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm dedicating my time to. So I agree with you. I just want to echo that the speaking business isn't going anywhere. It may have gone virtual to a large degree for the last little while, but because people book their, as you know, Kelly, their speaking events a year out, a lot of people feel it's going to come back around live well before that. And so people are already starting to book live events and hoping that they're going to run. And I think they will run. So again, to your point, I think people shouldn't give up, but I also feel now is the perfect time because I feel like people are starting to look again and they're having to start from scratch. So they might have had a speaker in mind a year ago that they forgot all about, or who's not like me, not wanting to take bookings right now. So I think we're going into And if you look at now, since the pandemic started, I think we're going into the very best time for speaking since the pandemic started. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. You know, and there's also a whole group of speakers that don't want to travel anymore. Now that the whole virtual world is opened up, there's a lot of people that are saying, nope, I don't want to travel. I know for me, it's been great. I've been able to spend pretty much a whole year at home with my boys, you know, who had just turned 18. You know, my daughter's 21. And so, you know, my boys and my daughter, they're loving that I'm home. So it might be a little bit harder to get me out on a plane again, but I don't know. I love to travel. So
yeah, I'm on both fences. Like I said, I'm not super pulled right now to go do speaking, but I'm also super pulled right now to travel. So it's a very weird dynamic. So the right bookings, like I did a booking just pre-COVID by a few months in Hawaii. And, you know, if somebody's going to book me to go to Hawaii again, because that was a paid booking, and it ended up paying for that trip and the Sedona trip and a Phoenix trip and a bunch of other stuff, all from that one booking, of course you could convince me to go to Hawaii for a booking. So yeah, it depends on what it's right now. So having said that, without further ado, let's bring on our next guest. And Kelly, again, because this is someone you introduced to us, I'm going to let you welcome her as well, but I'll be here too.
Sounds great. Hey, Mila, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you guys? I'm so glad to see Dannella.
Yeah. Well, you and I met at the Collaborate event, didn't we? Is that where we met the first time?
Yes, with Iman, I think. Yeah, we did.
Yes, that's right. Cool. And so I wanted to bring her on board because we do a lot of the same thing, but I am also a really big believer in collaborating with people because it's just an important thing to do. It's just like Dannella was talking about, collaborate. When you collaborate with people, magic can happen. And so that's why I wanted to bring Mila on board with us. And I'm going to have to jump off because I have another Zoom call that I have to go to. But Mila, please meet Corey. Corey is.
Can I correct you? It's Mila, like Mila Kunis.
Oh, the Mila, right? Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you for correcting me. I'll get that right.
No worries.
Well, it's good for me to know going in as well. So
yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. You know, the name is Czech, she's Czech, and I'm not.
Love it.
And
awesome.
Corey, yeah. Mila's grandma, right? It's your grandma that's really famous.
Yeah, my very famous grandmother. I just put this book out, From Cowgirl to Congress, about her. And I brought her into the modern age because she was the modern Amy Goodman of her time. So I did the Andy Warhol thing on the cover. And she was the first woman lobbyist. She put together the Pulitzer School of Journalism. She, in 1911, she spoke all over London with George Bernard Shaw. She spoke all over Washington, D.C. with Eleanor Roosevelt. And in her early 90s, she took me along when she spoke with Gloria Steinem, Marlo Thomas, and Jane Fonda in Hollywood all the time.
Wow, that is so amazing. I love that. And so, I mean, let's start there. But I want to dive into a few different directions. But let's start there. What was it like writing that?
Well, it was wonderful because she actually died in 1986 at age 98. And she let her secretary go at 93 to inspire us all. And we were very close. We hung out all the time. She's why I wasn't going to be like her, but now I'm exactly like her. When she passed away, the Now Women, National Organization of Women, came to me and said, "Are you going to march in her place?" And I was kind of young and flippant. I was really naive too. And I said, no, my grandmother told me I'm already emancipated from the work she did. I'm going to go live my life. Well, now I'm just like her. I speak out against pesticide and GMO as a big organic farmer, my husband and I. And so I'm just like her, but the book, when she passed away, I'm the archivist of the family. They sent me 2 huge file cabinets. And I started going through them, and there was her memoir, which I knew about, but I started reading it, and I didn't realize she was such a young, vibrant woman. And so now I'm helping people write their memoirs, and I'm telling them, write your memoir so that your children will know you were young once. And she was so vibrant. She was, I didn't realize that because when I knew her, she was an older woman that wore big hats, lots of jewelry, and smelled funny from too much perfume. So, it was just nice to be close to her again because we loved each other. and we're always together. See, I can tear up now.
I totally get it. And I wanted to ask you as well, and I say I totally get it, I should add, because I was really close with my grandfather, who I lost a number of years ago. And you know, I've thought about writing. I wrote a song called The Tale of an Ordinary Carpenter for my last CD, which is like 2014. It's been a while.
That's a good name for a book. That's a good name for a book.
Yeah, well, it may eventually, that's what I was going to say. It may eventually become a book about his life, but it actually, the song, if you knew him, the song was written about his life. Like, it talked about back in 1932, and it started with his birth year. And basically when boys were born as men, and it says, I'm trying to think of the lyrics, but it's basically, it tells the portrayal of from when he was a kid, you know, born, and then basically through him meeting my grandmother, becoming a carpenter. And one of the lines is that he's just an ordinary carpenter who gives new beginnings away. And it was the idea, because he always said to me, like, one of the things he loved about building homes is you're building homes sometimes for new couples, and it's their new beginning. And you're giving it to them once it's done. Like, here you go. And so anyway, I wrote a song about him, and eventually I thought about I should write a book about him. So kind of, I get it totally. It resonates with me, and it inspires me to maybe consider that again. But what I wanted to ask you about as well is, I saw that you have actually, we don't have a lot of guests on that are in this situation, but have written plays and musicals that basically have been around, like have made their mark in a big way.
They have. They go all over the world, and the great thing is, now I'm teaching a lot of writing and how to publish. But what happened was, when I wrote them, they were long, and we were doing them in the theater with our big theater company, and I kept having to write parts because we'd have more people in it, more kids, and so I realized that most schools can't do the long version. So you know what I did, Corey, is I went and I made the medium and short versions. So because I realized most schools didn't have that kind of rehearsal time and weren't as professional as maybe our company, because we were a big company. And so I did the modular for 22 plays. So like, I've got 66 plays out there. So what I'm doing with books, like, let's say you write this book, or you write your short book first, because the shortest book you can put on Amazon is 36 pages with a spine, and 98 pages get your name on the spine. The comfortable is 120 to 135 pages. This is my 300-page book. We're not doing missionary anymore. No more 600-page books. Divide them in two. Final answer, okay? But anyway, so what I'm teaching people now is to do the modular book. So maybe you start with your 36-page book. Maybe it comes from your blog, whatever. You get it published. You got a book in your hand. You're using it as a card, as your expertise, and then you do your medium book, and then your long book, and because on Amazon, the more books you publish, it builds your algorithms. Not that you're selling more books, but it brings people to your other books. And so what I'm taking this book, and I'm going to make about 5 books out of it. And even though I did this first, because she had already written it, and it was there, I had to go through her book, because it was very long. It was 600 pages. I cut it. I put in footnotes of all the famous people she was with, and I got real technical on it, but it was her writing, her telling her stories like she always told me, like she always did in her speeches, and that's always been my dream, to be a speaker like her. And I'm a little jealous of her, because when she wrote a book, Time to Speak Up for Women, in the 1930s, she toured the entire United States and spoke in front of huge groups. They didn't have TV everywhere back then. So she would speak in front of 200 to 2,000 people every time. And she was amazing. And so I followed her around, and she's the one who trained me to be a public speaker, which I'm coaching other people to do that too. But mainly I'm helping people write their books. I was just working with a professor in Paris, and I'm helping her write this fabulous book. She had all the trigger words. She's a Black woman living in Paris, and the book is about trying to get a divorce from her husband who she thinks is having an affair, but COVID hits. So COVID, trigger word. And I don't know. So what I'm trying to teach people is they don't have to write that huge long book. They can start with the 36-page book and move on.
I love that. And I didn't realize it was 36 pages. If you notice, I was looking, somebody came to my office door and then they just took off. So I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, I didn't realize it was 36 pages on Amazon was the basically the number, kind of that magical number. Did that change in recent years? Because I know that, I don't know if you ever heard this legendary story about the guy that wrote about my left foot. Did you ever hear that story?
Something about, no, I don't remember it though.
So basically, this guy wanted to prove he could have an Amazon bestseller very easily. So what he did was he took a picture of his foot, and that was the only thing inside the whole book, and it became a bestseller. And my question though is, I don't remember the circumstance or if he shared these details, but for him to make that work, would he have had to have more than 36 blank pages? Is that what it would be then? Or
no.
Back then could you do that?
The shortest book, you can write shorter books than 36 pages, but they won't have a spine. And I think they should have a spine. You see what I'm saying? Well, and then what I did, you're right though, and he did do that. And it's great. It's kind of like the Wild West out there right now. Anybody can do a book. You can get it done. Like, let's say if you're doing a 36-page book about something, that's what I'm helping business professionals do. You can write that in 2 or 3 days. Get it edited, because we don't want more bad books out there, right? And then you can get it up on Amazon in a week or two and have it in your hands and ready to pass out. And it's fantastic. This is after I wrote my grandmother's book, I had to write some fluffy books. So I teach these classes, write your short book in a day. And I've done a lot of them. And so I write in there when the people are writing for the 20-minute spurts. And so I wrote this book about my dogs. And these are my real dogs on the back. And then I had an artist on Fiverr from India draw my real dogs. And so the funny thing is about that, I can't see my real dogs anymore when I'm walking them. I can only see their cartoons.
That is awesome.
I know. And so, but here's what you do with these books. Like, if you want it, like, I wanted it to be 125 comfortable pages, and it was like at 102. So what I did was I double spaced. I have these little tricks. Double spaced between the paragraphs, and then instead of 1 point, I did 1.5, and then I put the pictures in, and so that's how I kind of fluffed up the book. But I had to write something fluffy after this intense book with my grandmother. Even though she had written it, I did so much research, and there's 98 pictures. And okay, here's a big rule: no color pictures. Repeat after me, because the first book I did. Okay, the sample. Okay, this sample here is $4.35. So you get all you want. You can sell them in everything, and then it sells for $17.95 online. But this sample is only $2.35, because see the difference in the spines. And so and then they give you these samples. So no matter what you're going to do, even if you do Ingram Spark, you make the samples. Here's a bar for the sample, and you get the samples done on Amazon. Then you go to Ingram Spark if you really want them in bookstores. Well, there's all these tricks. But anyway, so I just had a great time putting them all together, and I'm writing more books. I'm writing one on homeschooling right now, a short book to help parents, because I homeschooled all the way through 8th grade my daughter, and then I'm just putting together as many books as I can, and I'm making every book into more books. Like, I have a really good book. I think it's a freebie with you guys. I'm not sure. 101 surprising tips to promote your book, and it's just jam-packed full of everything you'll need to get it done. So I'm just putting books out like crazy, because I heard that there's this algorithms. There's a site on Facebook if you want it. It's called 20 books to 50K. And what they're talking about is putting a book out a month, no matter what size, and it builds your algorithms and it brings in the money.
I love that. So let me ask you this then, because there's something you hit there that I want to ask you about, Mila. What about, so you mentioned writing a book in a day and writing a book in a week and stuff like that, and doing a fluffy book versus a really intense book. I'd love to get your take on the difference in the type of book you're writing. So when you mentioned about that, like a fluffy book, and not even a fluffy book, but let's say like the book in a day type approach, because that, quote unquote fluffy book could still take a year to write if you wanted it to. But my question is, I see a lot of the write a book in 30 days, a lot of write a book in a day. Is it a certain type of book? Because you said a key thing as well when you're passing there, is you said, make sure you get it edited, because we don't need more bad books out there. And this is my personal experience, so I won't speak for anybody else. But I've done both sides. I've written really quick books, and I've written a book that's taken a bit more time. And every single time out of the park, the book that I wrote that took more time was a more, I don't want to say a higher quality book, but it was a totally different style of book. So I'm wondering if it also depends on what your goal is. For example, James Redfield, who I've done quite a bit of work with, wrote Celestine Prophecy. You know, the book sold 25 million copies. And it took him maybe 3 years to write it. And one of the things he shared that he did with it is he sent out 50 copies of the book to a focus group. And he wouldn't finish the book and say it was done until all 50 of those people said they couldn't put down the book, and they were catching the mistakes from him and also the things that were stopping them from turning the page. To write a book like that, you couldn't write it in 30 days. But then the other side is I wrote a book called The Book of Public Speaking, where the whole goal was to I shouldn't say the whole goal. I want to help people around being an influencer, but the secondary goal was to obviously introduce them to my work. You know, so inside, you can sign up for my email list and all that, and get a free audio by signing up for my email list. And so 2 different books with 2 different meanings. So when you say writing a book in a day or 30 days or what have you, do you think it's important that a person has different goals depending on the type of book it is, and thinks of writing that short, quick book differently than writing maybe a book like you wrote about your grandmother or co-wrote with her?
Well, let's put it this way. I have a student who was so happy to meet me, and she said, because I was so feeling intimidated to write the long book, but you gave me permission to write the short book, so I'm writing that first. I'm going to get it in my hands, like you say, and you can go onto Amazon and get the templates, so you feel like you're really writing the book, because the industry standard is 6x9. And if you're going traditional, you have to do every other line. You have to do Times New Roman, 12 point, final answer. But the thing is, you can do anything you want when you're self-publishing. So she was so excited, because now she's almost ready to publish her short book. Then she's going to tackle the longer book, and there's different ways of writing. I tell people, like when I wrote my grandmother's book, it was a little intellectual, because she was intellectual, even though it was just storytelling. But this book, I made what I call chatty. Okay, guys, here's my dogs. I think I'm a dog whisperer. Are you a dog whisperer? And so with her, I gave my class that she was in the choice. You can write your book chatty, or you can write it professional. And hers is about taking care of her husband as he was passing away, to help other caregivers, which is a big subject right now. Caregiving, and you're not going to believe the other subject that's selling like crazy, clutter. So anyway, she's writing hers more intellectual. It's her stories of what happened and how she handled each thing, but hers is a little more higher, like psychological. You know what I'm saying? So I would say it depends what you're writing. Like a lot of business people are writing their little real estate book, or like you did about speech. And so you have to decide, do I want to be chatty? Because you know how people are right now, Corey. All of us we're being all chatty friendly all the time. That's what's selling in our emails and everything we're doing in our funnels. And so a lot of people are responding to that. So it just depends what kind of book you're writing, and your choice of what you want to do. And then I would say, maybe write it chatty, then maybe write it intellectual, and get more than one book out, because then you'll appeal to different people. But the main thing is to get it done. I have hundreds of articles written about me over the years, and they always end up, after talking to me, naming it just do it or just start. So I'm saying 20, right now in the writing industry, it's 20 minutes a day is all we ask. Well, I say 5 minutes a day. And Toni, oh God, why can't I think of her name? The great novelist. Her first book she wrote in 15 minutes a day, because that's all she had, taking care of children. And I quote her all the time, because it's just so amazing. And so even if you did 15, 20 minutes a day, you'd have a book in 6 months or a year. But why not something you know about? Just get it on the page as fast as you can, and then go back and edit. Even Barbara Kingsolver. It's hard to think of names when I'm here online. But anyway, she says, give yourself permission to write a messy book, and then work on it until it's a good book. And I really like that, because she's the queen of novels, the queen of books almost. She's probably the first person I've ever read that did things from different people's perspective, and now everybody's doing it. And she's so amazing. And so This is what you do. You write. I met a writer at Comic-Con, and here's what he does. He writes in the morning from 8 to 12. Isaac Asimov did the same thing. I probably got the idea from him. And he writes science fiction, like kind of blood and guts science fiction. He writes a book a month, a big book, like 200, 300 pages. But he has a rule. He's only allowed to do new writing from 8 to 12, not hiding behind, which I hide behind, research or edits. So he just does that. And I love his story. I've been studying with him at Comic-Con for I've been at Comic-Con for 14 years. I've been with him the last 8 years. I go to all his classes because he has a lot to say. I have a lot of mentors. I mentor a lot of people, and I have a lot of mentors, you know. And so he's the most prolific writer, but that's because he has his rules. When you're writing, just mess it on the page and then fix it later.
Yeah, I love that. I heard this quote one time, and then I added to it. So, and I know the part I added, but the quote, similar to what you just said, I'll say it with my addition to it, and then I'll tell you what part I added. But the quote is something along the lines of, the crappy book that I wrote that I can edit is better than the brilliant book that you never get out of your head.
Oh, thank you. I need that quote because that's another one. Good.
Well, and I think the quote, the way I heard it was, my mediocre book is better than the book you'll never write. But I mean, I switched it because I wanted to add the editing part in, because you can write a crappy book and you can always edit it. So like, it doesn't mean that you wrote a mediocre book and they didn't write one, that your book should stand on its own as mediocre. You can still make it better. But if they never write the book, it doesn't matter how brilliant it is. It'll never see the light of day. And you could anyway, so that, I paraphrased it a bit.
I think you'll like this. I always quote, and you might like this too, to quote Wayne Gretzky, who said, "You miss 100% of the chances you don't take."
Absolutely.
To go.
Yeah.
You know, one thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and I don't think this is my own, but it's another quote that I often say is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
I always told my kids that when we were homeschooling. It doesn't hurt to ask. You should ask for everything. So my daughter, she asks for the world now. She's so funny that way. But you know, one thing too, to inspire you and everyone else, I never learned anything in school. I wasn't good at grammar or spelling, and I've just gotten better over writing and being in writers groups. It makes you a little tough so you can hear things. And so what happened is I've gotten better, but I have editors. So that it doesn't matter. I can write, and even my grandmother, when she wrote her book, it wasn't that well written because they were still using all the buzzwords, and it was a little laborious. That's why I had to cut it up a little bit. But one thing you were talking about too was beta readers. You know, it's good to have some beta readers who read it and tell you, well, you know, I'm not sure what you mean here, because we know what we mean there, but it doesn't always follow through. And then they also will edit it for you too. And never hit yourself over the head for finding still, after tons of editing and professional editing, mistakes. They'll always be there. My one publisher, he says that there's on the 20th edition of one of their big books, and they're still finding mistakes. So,
you know, having said that, one of my game-changing books for me was on the business side, was Think and Grow Rich. And I have an edition of Think and Grow Rich, which was written in 1937. And I found only one of the whole book, and I've read it over and over and over again. So I think there's only the one, but I found a grammar issue I don't know if it's what printing it was, but the book was written in 1937. So obviously there was a lot of people went through it since then. They say 200 million people read the book. You think somebody would say, you need to change it. But my point is that in a book like that, to find errors, to me, that gives us permission to write it and get it out there to the world. And my book, I don't have it in front of me here, but I wrote a book called The Book of Why and How. And that's kind of my book that I see as kind of I often say it's like my Celestine Prophecy. It's my Alchemist. It's my book like that. It's the one book I've been writing for years. And I've had 3 editors go through it, and I haven't found any this time, but it was self-published for 2 years. Then it went to a publisher for 2 years. And the last revision, we still found an error. Like, we still found grammar stuff. And it went through like 3 editors, the publisher themselves, my own going through it, the people my beta group, everything. And we still picked up a couple errors. So I agree with you. There's a quote Zig Ziglar said, you don't have to be great to start, but you need to start to become great.
Oh,
And
I love, see, those are good quotes. You need to send me those later. And I just want to say too that for the Celestine prophecy, I think I read once that he queried 90 publishers before he was accepted. And Jack Canfield, I just took a workshop with him. He did 147 before he was accepted, and he got accepted by a publisher that was going out of business, and then obviously they didn't.
yeah, so yeah, Jack and Mark, Victor Hansen, it was 100 and summit. Yeah, 142, I think. Is that what you said?
I think 27, but I'm not sure. I took the workshop and then I put it in my workbook right away for my students. I thought, wow, that was really cool, like inspiring,
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, so I mean, we've had Jack and Mark both on the show multiple times, and they both share that powerful story about how they everywhere they went, nobody was interested. And not only not interested, they told them, you're wasting your time. Nobody's going to buy a short story, inspirational type book. It's now the best-selling nonfiction inspirational short story book, and they were told nobody would buy it. The reason they wouldn't give up is because every event they taught at, the people in the room were saying, "How that story you just told? Where can I get that in a book?" So they were having people say it, and they even gathered a list. I forget the number, but it was insane, like 10,000 people who said they would buy the book the second it came out because they started collecting them at events, which is another great strategy. They actually had names of people said, "We will buy the book as soon as the publisher publishes it." And it may not have got them a deal early on, but that could help you. There's a guy named, have you ever heard of Harvey Mackay?
No.
He wrote the book, How to Swim with Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What was the other one? Don't trust the man. Don't trust the man who doesn't wear a shirt or something like that. He had really great names. But when he went in for the first book, the Sharks one, the publishers, they signed him. But then they said, okay, so what we should print maybe 2,000 or 5,000. He goes, no, I want to print 100,000. And they're like, we've never done that for any author ever. We're not doing that. The way he got them to do it was he brought in the next meeting 2 briefcases with over 15,000 business cards.
Wow.
And said, well, this is a company with 5,000 employees. Maybe they'll buy some books. And he went through them, and they finally said, okay, you sold us, we'll do it. And they did it, and he sold out of it, and I think it was like 3 months.
Well, and then there's a story I heard at Comic-Con about the Martian. A woman in my writers group knows him, and he put it on, self-published. No one would do it. And then he sold like millions of copies on his own somehow. And then NASA found it and decided to make it a textbook. And so then the publisher said, okay, now we want to publish it. And that's not normal. If you publish on Amazon first, normally they won't pick you up unless it's like really popular. And then the movies. So I love stories like that. I love to hear, it's so inspiring to hear everyone's story and how they found their way. And self-publishing right now, I have one mentor. She's wonderful. She was traditionally published, and she's gone all the way to self-publishing, and that's all she wants to do. She absolutely loves it. And you can become a bestseller pretty easily on Amazon, and it builds your clout, and it helps you. And it's the Wild West out there. It's so exciting. I can't even tell you all. Just go for it. Don't stop. Don't let anything stop you. I was never a good student. You know what, Corey? The only thing I learned in school the whole time, 12 years, was typing. And that's very good for a writer. I'm 75 words a minute because it was movement. It was kinesthetic, and I'm 75 words a minute, not accurate. And what I mainly did was like right now the clouds are going by, and I would just stick my eyes outside the window, and I don't think the teachers liked me very much, but I did learn typing, and now I'm a writer. So there you are.
Well, to that point, I love that you said that. And one of the things people have heard me share various times on here is that I barely graduated high school, so I get a 49+1 by a history teacher. And basically, I always say, 50 was a pass. And I don't think I got 49. What are the odds I landed at 49? I think he bumped me up to 49 and gave me a +1 to forever, get that in my mind. And so I always say I technically didn't graduate, but I got through. And I finished high school without knowing the difference between fiction and nonfiction. I didn't read my first book until age 27. And I wrote my first book about 3 years after that. And I remember my mom asked me, when I was around 18, she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I want to write a book. And I remember her saying, I don't think you can write a book until you read one. And, and that was where I was at. And so, to your point, though, Mila, I mean, I have 13 books out now. My latest one, I was a co-author book, so I won't take the credit for the marketing of it because it was a joint effort, but it became a Wall Street and USA Today bestseller just 2 weeks ago.
Wow,
and,
that's impressive.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to go into the co-author because I knew the lady knew how to do that, and so I knew that would be good for my bio, obviously. But the key thing, and this is my own opinion, and this is a separate side lesson for people, I get asked often from people when it comes to compilation books or anthologies, if you make bestseller, do you call yourself a best-selling author or a best-selling co-author? And I think it's personal taste or opinion. But for me personally, what I've done, because just how I feel on it, is the book's called Quitless that I was a co-author of. So in my bio now it says, and the co-author of the USA Today, Wall Street Journal bestseller Quitless, because it feels more authentic to me because I'm saying I'm the co-author. But at the same time, it was an anthology, but for people reading that, they still see a co-author. It could mean I just co-wrote it with one other person. So that's just how I did it, because I think it's all personal taste how you write it. But my other book, the reason I went with a publisher, just to go to the point of what you said about the publisher, is all my other books are self-published. And I will continue to do future books self-published. But I went with a publisher because of what I told you. It felt to me like my Alchemist or my Four Agreements. And I felt the only way to get that kind of book that needs to get out to more hands to get it out was distribution. So I'm always on the fence of if it's a book I feel has a wide audience and needs distribution, I would go with a publisher. Any other reason, I would probably go self-publish. So I just covered a whole lot of things there if you want to comment on any of them.
Well, I do that. I taught my class. I was teaching last Tuesday, and I teach a class called From Pen to Published. And I take people from the nuts and bolts from A to Z. And I have this workbook that has it all in there, and it's great. But the thing is, I was telling them, okay, I'm self-published. My first two books were traditionally published. I'm self-published now. I'm mainly going to do that. But there's two books I'm holding back. One is my memoir called The Cinderella Monologues of me growing up blonde in gangland. My brother didn't make it out. So, it's kind of like that. But I was kind of naive and young, and the boys didn't like me because I was tall, and I was with my grandmother half the time, so, but I did grow up there. And so it's called, and I couldn't believe the name wasn't taken, The Cinderella Monologues.
That's pretty
so
cool.
I'm going to try to pitch that one to a publisher, besides, self-publish all my other books. I'm going to get that algorithm thing going. And then I have another book. It's about an herbalist that saves England from the plague in the 1502. And it's, the White Princess and the White Queen is that time period. And so I'm going to pitch that one too. So I agree. You want to say, okay, we're going to self-publish most of the time maybe, but we're going to keep our special books because they're not in a hurry. With my grandmother's book, I tried a few publishers, but it didn't work because it had to come out for the 100th anniversary last August of women winning the right to vote. That's what it's for. So I had to cut and run, and I got a real professional person to put it together for me. And I couldn't wait for that one. But for these other two, there's no timeline on those. So I'm going to do that while I'm self-publishing. So do both. That's what I'm advising people. And here's another thing I'm advising people to do. And for you too, do it all. Do your soft cover first, okay? Because you want your friends and family to get it on the shelf. Wait a month, then do the ebook. Then do the hardcover, because sometimes if you're going to send it to movies and different people that are really important, they want the hardcover. And then I did the audiobook, which was very, very cool, through Amazon ACX. There's a whole process. If you go to my YouTube, Mila Johansen, I have a whole lesson on how to do it that I was teaching a writers group. And then do the PDF, because the PDF is what I give away when I'm speaking and when I'm on summits. In fact, you know what? You guys were just talking about COVID and speaking. Guess what? COVID has been so good for me in many ways, is that I would have just thought I was speaking in this area, maybe go Washington, D.C., speak to those women, Colorado, where my grandmother grew up, and I have been speaking to them. But I've been doing 2 and 3 podcasts a week since like August. and all over the world. And I would have never thought that was possible or known how to do it unless COVID came. And I thought, okay, I'm going to improve myself. So I took all these classes. I got all these mentors, and Dannella is one of them. And then I started mentoring people, and I started teaching online. I've been teaching offline for years. But I just put it all online, and it was this great opportunity. And I love Zoom, what we're doing right now. But I've just been speaking all over the world, and I would have never done that without COVID. So it's been very, very exciting for me to speak in India and Spain and New Zealand. A lot of people from New Zealand.
I love that you share that, because there's an important note, I think, in there, important thing I want to pull out. And I'll just add to what you were saying as well. You mentioned earlier about how rare it is, and I know firsthand, to have a book that's on Amazon or self-publish and bring to a publisher. And I'm going to give people a little hack or shortcut around how to do that, that I didn't know existed until somebody gave me this idea. And then I want to talk on what you just said about speaking now with COVID. But as far as the hack I'm getting at is my book, again, it's called The Book of Why and How. And it did really well as a self-published book. I mean, it may have done, I would say, well enough to still go to a publisher anyway. But here's what I did. I don't know if you've heard of this yet or not, but you'll probably want to know about it if you haven't, to share with people. Yeah. But it's a website called Publishizer.
Ooh.
Have you heard of this?
I'm going to write down.
Okay, so Publishizer, and it's a Z at the end, so Z-E-R. So Publishizer, what it is it's basically like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe for authors. And so what it is you basically go on there and people support you and all that stuff. So just think of Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever crowdfunder you're used to. It's the same concept, but it's only dedicated to books. But what's neat is the company has established credibility with the publishers. And so what happens is you sell a certain amount of books, and the more books you sell, the more publishers go, oh, I want to check that one out. So, of course, if you sell 500 books, then you're going to have bigger publishers looking than if you sell 100 books. And so I went on there with my book. I was on for about 3 weeks. I had done a Kickstarter the year before, so it was sketchy and scary because I'm like, I've already tapped into this book. Maybe I won't get as many people. In Kickstarter, it did about 11,000 in sales in about 3 weeks. But then on Publishizer, it did around 10,000, but it sold around 550 books. And that might sound small to people, but in the publishing world, that's a solid number in 3 weeks. Especially because it's not like you're not doing it in a way of doing a launch like you would for, say, trying to make New York Times or whatever, because you're kind of fixed because you're doing it on a crowdfunding page. So everything has to go through that. And so what I understood was the norm, if you hit 250, then mostly all the big publishers would be at least interested in hearing from you, because they were looking at, how short of a time you're doing it in. So what I did was I hit about 550. And so I was talking to HarperCollins and a lot of big publishers, but I wanted to go with Morgan James. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they're a New York-based publisher, traditional publisher, but they're very quick and nimble. They're an entrepreneurial publisher. And what I loved about them is you get to keep your copyright. You have all the rights to the book. You get about 30% per book rather than 10%. And they also don't want the rights to your audio or if you sell it as a movie. And they pretty much, if you get a professional editor and if they like the book, they don't try to change things. They would just want to work with you as an entrepreneur. And you get an advance. So I was like, they have everything I want. So what I did was I went on Twitter, and I got this idea from one of our students in our speaking program, Dave Clare, to give him a shout out. But what I did was I went on Twitter and I basically tagged them into my Publishizer campaign and said, hopefully my favorite publisher decides to bid on my book. And then they retweeted me within an hour and said, we looked at your book sales, you have our attention. And then before the end of that day, I had a private text from the founder, and he said, Corey, I want to connect you with our acquisitions editor about your book. And then I was on a call with them 2 weeks later, and then we had an agreement a month after that. But it all started with Publishizer. So what this is needed with, Mila, is you can take a book that, whether it had success or not on Amazon, but if you can somehow find a way to rally the troops and have a big sale on Publishizer, they're not going to look at your previous sales. So it's a way you can finally have a book that was already pre-published.
Corey, this is what I was looking for, because I couldn't get into GoFundMe, and I'm going to pass this on to my students. This is really big. I really want to thank you for that. That is fantastic. That is just so fantastic.
Well, thank you. And again, Dave Clare is the guy who introduced it to me because he told me about his publisher. And then, by the way, he told me about that. And then I'm like, okay, well, what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to look at the books that are published that I love, that are published by the publishers that I want to go with based on who the books are. So, for instance, I was like, okay, if I have a stack of books, are they all HarperCollins? Because if they are, that tells me I should be maybe going with them. Interestingly enough, I looked at one stack that day. It was a couple of days after I talked to Dave, and there was 10 books on the list. Now, Morgan James isn't big like Harper or the Big Five, so you wouldn't expect them to have many books in that stack. Anyway, out of the 6 books, 4 were by Morgan James. And I said, there's my sign. Now, I could have taken...
It's better to go with smaller because, Harper and Collins is so big, they won't look at hardly anyone, no matter what. I mean, it's just the way it is.
You have to be a celebrity or have a following that's so massive, it's unheard of.
Right. And talk about following for a minute, Corey. I know a woman, and she goes and pitches books across the East Coast. And she was telling me a story where she went up to this New York publisher and she was pitching 2 books. And they said, and they were pretty similar. And there's self-help. She was more into pitching self-help and business books, right? And so they said, well, which one has the most following? She goes, oh, this one. So they picked that one. So I've been building my following. I went from 56 followers on Twitter for 8 years. I couldn't figure it out. Till finally I found a formula. And in 9 months, I went to 8,000 followers. And that's in my little book, and it's so you want to build those followers as fast as you can. I have a few Facebook, so I have about 15,000 followers on Facebook. But the thing is, and I tell everyone, pick 2, because you guys were talking about doing, Clubhouse and all the stuff. Well, I always say, for especially people who aren't as savvy or haven't been doing it very long, pick 2 social medias. And for writing and publishing, I really feel that Twitter and Facebook are very, very friendly, and I get a lot of play from that, even though I know people who do Instagram and do really well with it. That's another one I haven't figured out. But Twitter has this thing. It's called #WritingCommunity. If you go to Twitter, #WritingCommunity, oh my God, almost every day people are saying, hey, I'm going to buy 5 ebooks today. Spam me your stuff. Or, all these, Saturday shameless promotional Saturdays. And it's fantastic. And then on Facebook, make your community page so you can talk to people and build following, and then make your page so that people can get your book. It's just amazing what social media will do for you. And I always say the best time to start your social media was a year ago to build hype. And the next best time is today. It's kind of the tree one.
Yeah. Well, before I forget, Mila, I want to make sure I put this in the comments. What was the hashtag on Twitter?
It's #WritingCommunity. I'm pretty sure that's it. Or writers community. It's in my book. The reason I write books, Corey, a lot of them. One book I did that made all around the world, super popular, all around the world, was 101 Theater Games. The reason I wrote that book was so I could remember the games when I taught. So I often everything I write, when I teach, I tell everyone, every single thing I teach is written down. You're going to either have it in my PowerPoint or my book or my workbook. I hardly say anything that I haven't really put down, because people learn different ways. They learn audibly, and then they learn from reading. So if you cross-pollinate that, I'm a teacher, so I really want people to get the info.
Well, and Mila, I want to add one more thing, and then I want to ask you how we can learn more as we wind down. But you mentioned about the speaking and COVID, and I didn't want to, usually I do a similar thing, what you just said. I'll bring up something so that I make sure I come back to it, because I want to make sure I cover it. And my way to do that is I don't want to look foolish and say, hey, we should talk about this and not talk about it, because then people are going, wait a minute, he said he's going to talk about that. I was interested in that. And so the whole idea of COVID and what it's done for speaking, I wanted to cover 2 things there. One, the people that have been most, I'm going to say, hit, or the people that are struggling the most with what COVID's done to speaking are, and Dannella mentioned this earlier, is keynote speakers that were getting paid to speak. So, I can say this from experience, because that's what I've been doing for 20 years. That was my core business. So if this was 5 years ago, it would have hit me really hard. And in 2008, whenever the housing crisis happened, budget started, basically drawing up for speakers. It hit me really hard. And so I can tell you that's who's getting hit the hardest. But anybody else, and this goes back to your point, anybody else who sees communication on podcasts, on virtual events like this, that type of stuff as speaking, if you view that as speaking, and if your goal is to bring people to your business, to bring people to your website, to build, like you said, followers, if any of that stuff you're looking to do, I actually think COVID has made it better. The people that it's hit the hardest are the ones that are wanting to get paid to speak, because virtual events, I mean, I have virtual events right now in the docket that I get paid to do, but you're A, not going to get paid as much as your normal fee, and B, they're not going to be as plentiful. So for somebody who's only built their business around getting paid to speak when they show up, this has really hit them hard. But I just want to point out, for everybody else, there's more speaking than there ever has been. And if you look at podcasting as speaking and virtual events, there's more of that. But the other side is, I always say this, people talk all the time about, I don't know if I'll go on this podcast because they only have 300 listeners an episode. But the key thing is, and this goes to your point about you've been able to speak everywhere, would you show up at an event down the street if there was 100 people or 300 people to listen to you? 100%. So why wouldn't you go on a podcast that has 300 avid raving fan listeners? It's the same thing. Now, you have to also factor in, do you have time to do it? Like, it depends on how many things you're juggling. But if you have time to do it, why would you look at that any different than speaking in front of those 300 people? Because it's just as intimate to be on a podcast with 300, maybe more, than to be in an audience in front of them. So I just wanted to touch on that people are saying, speaking has died and what have you. But I think for a lot of people, COVID has actually forced us actually to be able to reach more people through the online side of speaking than ever before. So there's goods and bads like everything.
Well, and also I think like a lot of my mentors have said they've made more money this year because they haven't traveled to those hotels and they've done more speaking, because you'd have to pick, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to go to Virginia and I'm going to go to Florida, but I can't hit the West Coast too. You know what I'm saying? So I, and I think about my grandmother speaking all over the U.S. and she traveled by train, all over the U.S. and spoke to all, women's groups were really big back then, bigger than they are now. They'd have 200, 2,000 in their group. If you watch the movie The Help, which is my favorite movie in the world, and they have those women's groups, that they play the bridge and they do all the little salads and stuff. Well, they had those all over the U.S. and that's where she was speaking. And I've been speaking to a lot of women's groups, but mainly podcasters. It's the Wild West in podcasting now too. I thought about doing my own podcast, and I thought, no, I'd rather be on podcasts. I want to speak. I want to share, and what I've been speaking about, you need to have your little subject matters, right? So I've been speaking about my grandmother's book, and what I've done is, because people want self-help and how people can be, come from tragedy to glory. And so I've been telling my story of growing up in gangland and my grandmother's story of growing up on this impossible situation on a cattle ranch where there was incest and murder and all kinds of things. I didn't have that kind of childhood, but she did. And a teacher got her to Smith College, and she never looked back. She went home and visited, but she got away from it and became so famous. She was always on the front lines of everything. And so I like to tell that story of how she did it and how I did it, and how we both became super successful women. So that's a subject people really want me to speak about. But then I also have been on podcasts a lot speaking about the short book, because people love getting permission to write the short book, and that's what I'm all about. And so I have these two really good subjects. I have several more, but those are my two main things. And often, like today, we're combining them, where we're talking about, my grandmother and I, and then going into writing the books. So it's good. Get your subjects together, make your one page, right? Your one page, we can look that up, and put it on your website. And it's my website. If you want to get a hold of me, is milajohansen.com, just my name, like it's spelled down there. And I have on a freebie. I have my book, 101 Surprising Tips to Promote Your Book, on there. So you just go to the freebie at the top and you can grab that book and you'll love it. It's jam-packed with, it has that formula for Twitter in there,
No, I love that. And I looked it up and it looks like it might be #writing community, because it said, when I looked at it, said 658 tweets in the last hour. So that sounds like that'd be a pretty big community. And the other thing I was going to add for people too, you mentioned Instagram, and I don't know all the exact hashtags, but I know that same idea, and people can Google this. I could Google it and let people know after our break we're going to take here shortly. But basically, you can go on Instagram, and I think it's like Books of Instagram. is one of them, but there's like 4 or 5 hashtags. Books of Instagram for sure is one, but there's 4 or 5 hashtags, and it's like that's where your writing community is on Instagram. And same idea as what you just said with Twitter. When you put that in, you start basically getting access to all the people that are writing about, there are Instagramming about books right now. And it's so powerful. Not only that, if you have a book out, if people are all engaging with that hashtag, why would you want to put your book up and then put that hashtag there as well?
Well, every day it's great. It used to be Fridays. It used to be something Friday, follow Friday. And so that was all it started with. And everyone would go, okay, let's follow each other. And you'd get like 100. And everybody would repost. And what they do is they're very generous. They repost your pinned post. So get a pinned post. And then they started shameless promotional Saturdays, then shameless promotional Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays. They do it every day now. And it's like, and everybody who does it, here's a trick. Put a little heart before you reply, and then make your reply like make a standard one, like, oh, here's my book, blah, 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 and here's my thing, my URL. And then you just post that, go to the next one, heart, post that, but you do the heart so that you know you've been there, so you don't repost on their thing again and again. And then most of them say they're going to go back to your pin post and they're going to share it on their side. And so I get, you won't believe the play I get on Twitter now. I think the formula is post, repost, reply. There's one more. See, that's why I need my books. I put it all in my books.
They're your sources of memory. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, Einstein said, someone said, hey, Einstein, what's the theory of relativity? He said, I don't know. It's in a book. I leave my mind open for new ideas.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I heard it. It's funny because I heard it in a different way. I heard it as somebody asked him for his, I don't know, like his home address or something. And he said, why would I bother storing my mind with something like that? So I heard similar thing. But I mean, it's the same principle either way, right? Why would I bother remember something that I don't really need to?
I think you're right. You know what? I've never heard that, but why would he say relativity when he really does understand it? I think you're right. I think yours is more right.
Well, that's what I heard. So I mean, but anyways, all these quotes it's like, right, if you go in a room and you start the story and then everybody whispers in the ear, by the time it's done, it's a totally different story. It's probably the same thing. The premise is there and the idea is there. It's just who knows what he actually said. But I've heard it as his home address, but who knows? But having said that, Mila, you gave us the website where we can connect with you to learn more. You've given us so much insight today. And so I want to thank you so much. And I also want to, with your permission, call it a to be continued and look to how we can bring you back on down the road in the future. And at the same time, yeah, that would be awesome. And I was going to say at the same time. Can I say
one more thing that's going on is Kelly is actually a lunchtime speaker at a workshop that Sherry Merz and I are putting on this Saturday and Sunday. It's an all-day workshop to start your book. We have these techniques to really help you start your book, decide what your book's about, if that's where you're at. And it's called Jumpstart Your Book to Build Authority. You can find it on Facebook. Jumpstart Your Book to Build Authority, and it has the link. And I think it's going to be a great workshop because Sherry really helps people get their books done, and so do I. And Kelly's speaking as a lunchtime speaker on Saturday with us. So I just wanted to mention that too.
Awesome.
And one more thing, I do have a Facebook site if you want to come and get tons of information called Write Your Short Book Today. So you can join my group.
I'm going to put that in the comments as well. Write Your Short Book Today is the Facebook group?
Write Your Short Book Today. It's just a Facebook group. And I put tons of information and quotes and I do the page counts and just whatever comes up that day, and the workshops are on there.
Awesome stuff. I'm going to actually put that in the comments right now. So that way somebody watching this they can just literally scroll down and put it in there. And I saw you were kind enough to put your website in, so I'm going to put that in the comments as well. So like I say, Mila, this has been an absolute pleasure. Again, with your permission, I'll call it to be continued. And I just want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing so much great insight.
Thank you, Corey. You're a great pleasure to talk to because we're on the same page here. I love that.
I agree, 100%. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We'll let you run, and then I'm just going to say my goodbyes, and we're going to take a break, and then we have a guest coming on a little bit later. Awesome. Thanks so much. See you, Mila. Wow. What a fantastic guest. And I'm so excited that Kelly connected me with her and connected, obviously, everybody with her by bringing her on today. So amazing stuff. As you just heard me say, we're going to take a break today. We had a speaker that was scheduled to come up right after this, but he had to make a change in his plans. And so we had a break between both. So instead of me and Kelly staying on in between the break, I thought, well, maybe it makes sense just to break for everybody. I don't want it to be like a time filling thing where we're filling like an hour and a half. So I figured we just have a clean break and we'll take a break and then we'll come back for everybody. We have an amazing speaker coming up at 2 o'clock Eastern. And I mentioned earlier, if you want to know more about Blue Talks, I know a lot of you that visit us each time are familiar with Blue Talks, but if you want to know more about Blue Talks, feel free to visit us at bluetalks.com. These are the 3 books in the series so far. We have the 4th one. Kelly is actually involved in doing the launch with us. I think we're going to be putting it up tomorrow or the next day for pre-order. So lots of things going on with Blue Talks. You can also find our YouTube page at bluetalks.com. You can check us out on Apple, Roku, Amazon, which one am I forgetting? Google Play, Connect TV, C-Suite Network, all kinds of different places. And I told you guys about my new Influencer Vault. Feel free to check that out at theinfluencervault.com. It's basically $44 a month Canadian, $35 US, and you get access to weekly interviews with some of the biggest names in the thought leadership world. Just in the next couple of months, Les Brown's coming up live, Bob Proctor, Ami James, who's with the Miami Inc. TV show, Stedman Graham coming up, JJ Virgin, John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars. And so you get to actually come weekly and ask your questions in real time. Some of the greatest minds in the book world, in the speaking world, in the podcasting world. And then on top of that, we actually share writing, speaking, and interview opportunities on a weekly basis inside the vault as well. So this is brand new. Just launched it a week and a half ago. But go to theinfluencervault.com. You can get a free top 10 insights guide. Once you do that, it'll forward you to the Influencer Vault website, and you can read all about it there and make your decisions accordingly. So on that note, thank you, everybody. We'll see you after the break.